You ever see the names for U.S. military operations and wonder where they come from? Well, it turns out they're way more than just random labels. They're actually a huge and kind of hidden part of the strategy itself. All right, let's get into it.
I mean, think about some of the names we've heard lately. Operation Midnight Hammer, Operation Epic Fury. They sound pretty intense, right? So, are these just cool-sounding code names to pump up the troops, or is there something a lot more deliberate going on here?
The answer? Oh, it's absolutely a message. These names are weapons, carefully crafted for a war of words. They're designed to shape how you, me, our allies, and even our enemies think about American military power. They're meant to build support and justify an action before a single shot is even fired.
So to really get how we ended up with names like Epic Fury, we've got to go back. Back to a key moment when the U.S. military basically had this light bulb moment, realizing that names are an incredibly powerful PR tool.
Okay, so picture this. It's 1989. The U.S. is gearing up to invade Panama, and the first name they came up with for the operation? Operation Blue Spoon. Yeah, Blue Spoon. General James Lindsay was, let's just say, not a fan. He got on the phone and asked a colleague that one simple question. He knew, right then, that a name like that was a total PR disaster waiting to happen.
So Blue Spoon was thrown out, and fast. The new name? Operation Just Cause. And this, right here, shows you the whole game. One sounds kind of goofy, right? The other sounds powerful, righteous, like there's no way you could argue with it. It was a genius bit of branding, and it kicked off a whole new era of how these things get named.
And you can really see the evolution here. Back in World War II, the names were top secret. Churchill was famously worried a mother might find out her son died in an operation called Bunny Hug. After the war, you get these unclassified nicknames for the public. But for decades, they were mostly just random words put together. Then, after Just Cause in '89, everything changed. Naming wasn't just for logistics anymore. It was a strategic weapon.
So, what does this new naming playbook actually look like? Well, let's break down how these strategies have changed decade by decade.
You can see these really clear patterns. In the 80s, you had these aggressive names like Urgent Fury for Grenada, but that got some blowback for sounding way too militant. So in the 90s, they did a complete 180. You get these soft, feel-good names like Provide Comfort and Restore Hope to frame things as humanitarian missions. Then, of course, after 9/11, the names get huge. Big, ideological statements like Enduring Freedom, meant to justify these long, drawn-out wars. And now, it's like we've come full circle, right back to that sharp, aggressive, martial language.
Okay, so this leads to a really important question. If the names are basically PR, what are the real reasons? What are the strategic drivers that have consistently pushed the U.S. into military action?
Because once you peel back the layers of public messaging and those carefully chosen names, you find a pretty consistent set of reasons for why America has gone to war over the last 50 years.
When you really boil it down, three core drivers pop up again and again. You had anti-communism during the Cold War, stopping Soviet influence in places like Grenada or Afghanistan. Then you have oil and resource security, which is still a huge factor, patrolling the Persian Gulf, the war in Iraq. And finally, since 2001, the big one has been counterterrorism.
And this is why it gets complicated, because the public name often doesn't tell the whole story. Take Somalia. The famous name was Operation Restore Hope, which sounded like it was all about famine relief, a pure humanitarian mission. But when you dig deeper, it turns out that securing future oil concessions for American companies was also a major, though much quieter, U.S. interest.
So while those three drivers were the name of the game for decades, the world has changed. A lot. And that brings us to today, to a massive shift away from the global war on terror and a pivot to a new focus, much, much closer to home.
If you look at the last 50 years, the geographic focus of U.S. military power has swung like a giant pendulum. We've gone from Cold War proxy battles all over the globe and massive ground wars in the Middle East to a sharp new focus on our own backyard, Latin America and the Caribbean. And this whole pivot is built on a new policy, the Trump corollary to the Monroe Doctrine. Now, you probably remember the original Monroe Doctrine from way back when. It basically told European powers to stay out of the Americas. This new version takes that idea and supercharges it. It says the U.S. must be the top power in its hemisphere and will use military force to take on drug cartels, stop illegal migration, and push back any foreign influence in the region.
So what does this new peace through strength doctrine actually look like in practice?
Well, the language, the structure, the operations themselves, they all signal a really deep change in American military thinking.
And honestly, nothing makes that change clearer than this. In 2025, the Department of Defense, a name that was picked after World War II to sound less aggressive, was officially renamed. It is now, once again, the Department of War.
The operations in this new era are all about high intensity and high tech. Midnight Hammer was an 18-hour stealth bomber mission to drop massive bunker buster bombs on Iran. Epic Fury was a huge air campaign to, and I quote, obliterate Iran's military. Southern Spear was a direct intervention in Venezuela. The pattern here? Overwhelming force, precision strikes, and a clear goal of keeping American boots off the ground.
So that leaves us here. We've seen the language of war go from a joke like Blue Spoon to a plea like Restore Hope, and now to these blunt statements of power like Epic Fury. As technology makes it easier and easier to carry out these incredibly lethal but low-risk operations, what does this new, brutally honest language of war really mean for the future?